Good evening. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches development projects worth ₹120 billion in Gaya. Bihar says better connectivity is transforming the destiny of the state. Former Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe arrested in Colombo, accused of misuse of state funds. Israel denies reports of famine in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu says will begin Gaza ceasefire talks. Russia and Ukraine target each other's energy infrastructure. Ukrainian attack suspends Russian oil flows to Hungary and Slovakia. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the country will begin Gaza ceasefire talks. He adds the country is also pushing ahead with its plan to capture Gaza City and defeat Hamas. The report has more.
In a major breakthrough, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel will begin Gaza ceasefire and hostage release negotiations with immediate effect. Netanyahu added that he was meeting military commanders to approve plans for capturing Gaza City and defeating Hamas.
I arrived at Gaza Division to approve the plans that the Israeli army presented to me and the Minister of Defense for taking over Gaza City and defeating Hamas. I greatly appreciate the presence of the reserve soldiers and of course the regular army for this vital goal. At the same time, I have issued instructions to begin immediate negotiations for the release of all our hostages and an end to the conflict on terms acceptable to Israel.
In a sign that the government was pressing ahead with the plan, the military has called up 60,000 reservists. Meanwhile, Israelis continue to protest for the release of hostages. Global pressure is also mounting, with UN Chief Antonio Guterres renewing calls for a Gaza ceasefire.
I must reiterate that it is vital to reach immediately a ceasefire in Gaza and the unconditional release of all hostages, and to avoid the massive deaths and destruction that a military operation against Gaza City would inevitably cause. Simultaneously, the decision by the Israeli authorities to expand illegal settlement construction which would divide the West Bank must be reversed. All settlement construction is a violation of international law.
The development comes after Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposal put forward by Egypt and Qatar. The plan calls for a 60-day ceasefire and the release of 10 hostages held in Gaza by Hamas and of 18 bodies. In return, Israel would release nearly 200 long-serving Palestinian inmates. Once the temporary ceasefire begins, the proposal is for Hamas and Israel to begin talks on a permanent ceasefire that would include the return of the remaining Israeli hostages. Bureau Report, TD India.
Meanwhile, rejecting a report from Global Hunger Monitor, Israel's foreign ministry has said there is no famine in Gaza. In a statement, the ministry has said integrated food security phase classification published a tailor-made fabricated report to fit Hamas's fake campaign. The monitor said over 500,000 people, nearly a quarter of Palestinians in Gaza, are experiencing famine, and that the number was due to rise by the end of September. In other news, Russian oil supplies to Hungary and Slovakia could be suspended for at least 5 days following the latest Ukrainian strike on part of the Druzhba pipeline in Russia. The Hungarian and Slovak governments have written to Europe's Executive Commission, urging it to guarantee the security of oil supplies from Russia. EU members Slovakia and Hungary have opposed the bloc's decision to phase out Russian oil and gas by the end of 2027. Russia and Ukraine have stepped up attacks on each other's energy infrastructure over the past few weeks, despite a push by US President Donald Trump to reach a deal to end the conflict. And earlier, Russian forces claimed to have made advancements in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. The Russian forces said they have captured the Ukrainian village of Alexandro-Shatan, while Ukraine reported that it had regained control over most of the Vost in Donetsk region and also hit Russian targets, including an oil refinery. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, in a video address on Thursday, reported that Russia launched a massive attack overnight, including 574 drones and 40 missiles. Zelenskyy also said one missile destroyed an American-owned household appliance factory in Mukachevo, calling it a deliberate strike on US investment. Further, Zelenskyy stressed that Russia's overnight attacks show Moscow is trying to avoid the need for meeting aimed at ending the conflict. Zelenskyy also said that negotiations at the leadership level can realistically bring progress towards achieving peace.
In Mukachevo, the Russians burnt a factory, an American factory, by the way, a manufacturer of electrical appliances. And those were household appliances, nothing military. The Russians knew perfectly well where they were aiming. There are two negotiation formats which realistically can bring progress, and one of these is to meet at the leadership level. A bilateral format of Ukraine-Russia and a trilateral one, Ukraine-US-Russia. We discussed that in Washington. Putin talked about that during his call to President Trump. Now what we hear from Russia is just truth be told, simply indecent.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will have a joint telephone call with his French, British and German counterparts on Friday to discuss nuclear talks and sanctions. The three European nations have threatened to activate United Nations sanctions on Iran under a snapback mechanism if Iran does not return to the negotiating table over its nuclear program. The countries, along with United States, contend that Iran is using nuclear program to potentially develop weapons. In 2018, President Donald Trump pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear agreement, citing non-compliance by Tehran. The US has accused Iran of trying to build nuclear weapons, a charge that Tehran denies. Bangkok Criminal Court on Friday cleared former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra of charges of violating Thailand's strict law on royal insults. Thaksin, talking to reporters outside the Bangkok court, said that he had been cleared in the case, which saw him facing up to 15 years in prison under laws forbidding criticism of King Maha Vajiralongkorn and his family. Former Thai PM had denied wrongdoing in the case brought by the royalist military, stemming from a 2015 interview that he gave to a foreign media. The acquittal marks the latest turbulent chapter that has seen his political fortune rise and fall over the past couple of decades. Elected as Prime Minister in 2001 and again in 2005, Thaksin was ousted by the army in 2006, took himself into exile 2 years later. He pledged repeatedly to return despite being convicted on graft and abuse of power charges in his absence. Thaksin finally made good on his vow in August of 2023, touching down in Bangkok to a hero's welcome from his supporters on the day of Pheu Thai Party return to office. He was immediately arrested and sentenced to 8 years in jail, but was whisked to a police hospital within hours on health grounds. Within days, King Maha Vajiralongkorn had cut his term to 1 year. Thaksin returned to his Bangkok home in February of 2024, having seemingly not seen the inside of a jail cell. The verdict came a week before another court rules whether Thaksin's daughter, Phengtan Shinawatra, to be thrown out of office as Prime Minister. Let's now look at the details of Thaksin's royal insult case that arose from his 2015 remarks about the 2014 coup that ousted his sister, Yingluck. Thaksin, twice elected as Prime Minister, fled a coup and lived in exile for 15 years before returning to Thailand in August of 2023. After the return, He was sentenced to 8 years for graft, but was sent to a police hospital due to health issues. Days later, the king reduced his sentence to 1 year. He was released in February of 2024 under an early release scheme for elderly inmates. A new case set to conclude on September 9th argues that Thaksin wasn't eligible for early release since he never really served time in a jail cell. On to our next big story. Former Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe was produced before Colombo Fort Magistrates Court shortly after he was arrested. Police allege that the 76-year-old leader diverted state money to cover expenses when he travelled to the UK to attend the PhD graduation of his wife, Professor Maitri Wickremesinghe, at the University of Wolverhampton. The visit, investigators say, was tagged onto an official tour of Cuba and the United States but had no government purpose. Funds of about $50,000 was reportedly spent on airfare, accommodation and related costs on the London leg. Wickremesinghe and his United National Party have denied the allegations. Wickremesinghe served as Sri Lanka's president from 2022 to 2024. And for more, joining me is DD India correspondent Ahmed Moin Farokhi from Colombo. Ahmed, if you could take us through the details of the case and what happens next.
Shubhendu, good evening to all of our viewers. You see, this is, something of a historical kind of a case that has happened in Sri Lanka. This is for the first time ever that a former head of state has been arrested on the charges of corruption and graft and misuse of public money. This is something which is unprecedented so far. Now, what had happened was Mr. Wickremesinghe was the president between 2022 and 2024 till the time President Anura Kumara Dissanayake took over. During 2023, in September, the then president had been on a state visit to USA and Cuba. And on the way back, he made a stopover in London. There was a university event in which his wife was being awarded a graduation ceremony was there. So he had made a stopover there, and that is the charges primarily relate to this particular visit of his to London. The allegation is that he misused his official position, he misused the office, the official funds, the state funds for his private tour. That said, the charges have been framed by the Criminal Investigation Department. In the arrest receipt, it has been mentioned under Section 5(1) of the Public Property Act, as well as Sri Lanka's Penal Code 386 and 388. So these charges primarily revolve around misuse of official position as well as misuse of public funds that have been provided for running the office of the president itself. Currently speaking, he was presented before the Fort Magistrate Court a little while ago, and the further course of action will be disclosed if the court will allow for a bail, if there is any condition that would be provided, or if he would be remanded to the police. So these things will be, the details of these will be revealed probably in a little while. So we are still awaiting the details further, Shubhendu.
Okay, Ahmad, thank you for joining us with those inputs. Still to come on this edition of TT India Live. India's External Affairs Minister concludes the Moscow visit, calls on Russian President Putin, discusses key bilateral and global issues. Odisha's Rashmita Sahu wins gold medal in canoe sprint, and more updates from Khelo India Water Sports Festival 2025.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you.
represent save your country.
You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Anta-Simaria Bridge project on National Highway 31 on Friday, marking a significant boost to road connectivity in the state of Bihar. The new bridge will reduce the extra travel distance by more than 100 kilometers for heavy vehicles traveling between North Bihar and South Bihar areas. The bridge will also boost economic growth in adjoining areas, especially in North Bihar, which are dependent on South Bihar and Jharkhand for getting necessary raw material. Addressing the event, Prime Minister Modi reiterated that providing pakka houses to the poor is one of his major commitments.
मेरा एक बड़ा संकल्प है, जब तक हर जरूरतमंद को पक्का घर नहीं मिल जाता, मोदी चैन से नहीं बैठेगा। इसी सोच के साथ पिछले 11 साल में 4 करोड़ से अधिक गरीबों को पक्के घर बनाकर दे दिए गए। और हमने सिर्फ घर यानी 4 दीवारें नहीं दी, बल्कि उन घरों के साथ गरीब को उसका स्वाभिमान दिया है। और जो लोग अब भी पीएम आवास योजना के लाभ से छूट गए हैं, मैं उन्हें विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि पीएम आवास का अभियान तब तक जारी रहेगा जब तक हर गरीब को अपना पक्का घर नहीं मिल जाता।
And emphasizing that Indian Constitution expects honesty and transparency from every public representative, Prime Minister Modi stressed that the dignity of the Constitution must not be allowed to be torn apart.
साथियों, संविधान हर जनप्रतिनिधि से ईमानदारी और पारदर्शिता की उम्मीद करता है। हम संविधान की मर्यादा को तार तार होते नहीं देख सकते। इसलिए एनडीए सरकार भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ एक ऐसा कानून लाई है जिसके दायरे में देश का प्रधानमंत्री भी है। इस कानून में मुख्यमंत्री और मंत्रियों को भी शामिल किया गया है। जब ये कानून बन जाएगा तो प्रधानमंत्री हो या मुख्यमंत्री या फिर कोई भी मंत्री, उसे गिरफ्तारी के 30 दिन के अंदर जमानत लेनी होगी। और अगर जमानत नहीं मिली तो 31वें दिन उसे कुर्सी छोड़नी पड़ेगी।
Earlier, Prime Minister Modi began the day with a roadshow in Gaya, followed by a public meeting where he laid the foundation stone and inaugurated multiple development projects belonging to sectors including power, road, health, urban development and water supply. Prime Minister Modi also flagged off Amrit Bharat Express between Gaya and Delhi and Buddhist circuit train between Vaishali and Kodarma. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated multiple metro rail projects worth over 5,200 crore rupees in Kolkata on Friday, giving the city a major infrastructure push and world-class connectivity. Prime Minister Modi flagged off mass rapid transport services on the newly constructed stretches of 3 metro rail lines in Kolkata. In other news, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has said Pakistan Army Chief Asif Munir's recent comparison of India and Pakistan as Ferrari and dump truck was a confession of Pakistan's poor economic situation.
अगर दो देश एक साथ आजाद हुए और एक देश ने कड़ी मेहनत, सही नीतियों और दूरदृष्टि से फेरारी जैसी अर्थव्यवस्था बनाई और दूसरा अभी भी डंपर की स्थिति में है, यह उनकी अपनी नाकामी है। मैं असीम मुनीर के इस बयान को एक कन्फेशन के रूप में मैं मानता हूं, देखता हूं।
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Friday interacted with women military officers of United Nations in New Delhi. During the interaction, Defence Minister stressed the government is strengthening its policy to encourage women's participation in the country's armed forces and peacekeeping contingents, ensuring that they have equal opportunity to lead and serve. Minister Singh also unveiled the UN Journal 2025 Blue Helmet Odyssey 75 Years of Indian Peacekeeping, a Platinum Jubilee edition which captures India's legacy, innovations and future vision in UN peacekeeping. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar wrapped up his official visit to Russia on Thursday with a meeting with President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin. During the interaction, Minister Jaishankar conveyed warm greetings from President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi and briefed President Putin on his discussions with First Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The leaders also reviewed preparations for the annual Leaders Summit scheduled for the end of the year. Jaishankar expressed appreciation for President Putin's insights on global developments, including the situation in Ukraine. Earlier on August 20th, Minister Jaishankar co-chaired the 26th session of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific, Tech and Cultural Cooperation with First Deputy Prime Minister Manturov of Russia. Following the session, Jaishankar and Manturov addressed the India-Russia Business Forum. It saw participation from a broad spectrum of stakeholders, including government officials and industry leaders. Discussions highlighted the need for a coordination mechanism between the Business Forum and the IRI-GC working groups to facilitate smoother engagement. Overall, Jaishankar's visit to Moscow aimed at further strengthening time-tested India-Russia partnership. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. In Germany, panda twins Lenny and Lotte are celebrating their first birthday at Berlin Zoo. In the wild, pandas tend to only raise one of their cubs if they have twins, making the extra human help necessary. The two female panda babies and their parents, Mang Mang and Jiao Qing, are the only giant pandas living in Germany. Vietnam's capital city Hanoi is drawing large number of domestic and international visitors with just over 10 days to National Day on September 2nd. Hotel and accommodation searches in Hanoi have jumped 370% compared to the same period last year. Notably, heritage-focused tourism continues to lead visitor interest in Hanoi. In China's Shanghai, zookeepers prepare ice blocks and watermelons to help animals cope with extreme heat. Shanghai continues to issue high temperature alert as temperatures reach 38 degrees Celsius. The heat wave, which began on August 6th, has now persisted for 16 consecutive days. Updates from the second day of Khelo India Water Sports Festival 2025 at the iconic Dal Lake, Srinagar. Odisha's Rashmita Sahu scripted history by winning the gold medal in the women's 200 meters canoeing sprint. Sahu had won the 1200 meters canoeing event on day one Earlier, Mohsin Ali from Kashmir won gold in 1000 meters kayaking event, while Vishal Kumar won gold medal in men's 1000 meters canoeing event. With 24 gold medals at stake, the Dal Lake has witnessed participants pushing their limits to secure victories. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan this QR code and download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.